Okay, in this session of the Women in Publishing Summit, we are going to do a completely different kind of interview than I've ever done before. So this is really fun. We are going to be talking with co-authors about their journey of writing a book together and what that looks like and how you co-author a book and anything that might come along with that, as well as their upcoming book, which is going to tell you even more details on how to do all of this. So I'd really like to welcome Joy Dawn Baker and Terri Goodman. So we have, I'm just going to read their bios super quickly so that you know where they're coming from. So Joy Dawn Baker is a PhD, RN, BC, I'm not going to read all of those letters. In a nutshell, she's a very educated nurse, which is my mom too. So I have a special place in my heart for nurses, as I was telling them before. And you know what? I was giving them such a hard time because I didn't have both of their bios, but now as I'm reading this, I see they're both in one. So I do have them. And Terri Goodman is also PhD RN, and these are writing partners who have co-authored The Wake Up Call, the first novel in a series called The Nurseketeers. Their second book in the series is scheduled for publication in 2019, and they are both accomplished authors, speakers, and all the works, and leaders in, okay, I don't know what perioperative nursing is. Did I say that right?
Operating room.
You would?
Operating room.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that would be where operative comes from. Okay. So Dr. Baker has served as the editor-in-chief of the AORN Journal and on the National AORN Board of Directors as director and vice president. Baker received the Outstanding Achievement in Peri-Operative Academic Nursing Education Award. I promise I can read. I'm struggling with these words here today, but she's a clinical professor at the University of Texas at Arlington, where she teaches evidence-based practice in the Nursing Master's Program. Dr. Goodman is the owner and CEO of Terri Goodman and Associates, an approved provider of continuing nursing education, and was a recipient of the AORN's Jerry G. Pierce Outstanding Services Award. That's quite a lot of accomplishments. Congratulations to both of you. And then you decided to write a fiction book together. How did that come about?
It came about initially from driving to Austin from North Texas to just talk about it. We're in the car for 3 hours together and 3 hours back. And we decided that now is the time. Both of us wanted to do that in the past, and it seemed like the time to do it, and we did it.
So before we get in, I would just love to hear a little bit about the Nurseketeers series, and it sounds like it's nurses with some mischief.
Well, maybe the authors are the mischief piece. The Nurseketeers actually started out with 4 people that I saw in a movie theater, and I just took notes and decided to give them characterization related to, they were all nurses as far as I was concerned. And I dreamed up this kind of background for them. Then when Terri and I got together, we gave them names and we fleshed out the characters, and we started them at the age of entry into college. So that's really kind of where it became. During the first series, the 4 nurses become the Nurseketeers as sort of their own sorority, if you will.
Fun.
Support group.
Yeah.
You got that right, Terri?
Mm-hmm. A book a year, one for each nurse. We'll get them out of college.
Oh, that's great. I love it. As I mentioned to you before we started recording, my mom is a nurse, so I know she's probably I'm going to be sending these books her way because I know she would enjoy that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things that I really love about this situation. One, you're very well accomplished in very academic, type situations. So I love it that you show that people can still be academic and fun at the same time. That's great. That's fantastic. I love the idea that you took advantage of a situation and are putting together a really fun book from it. So what's the process like once you're in the car together, you're thinking about this, you're like, this is a great idea, then how did that mold and shape into, okay, we're going to do this? Did you divide up like who's going to write what, who's going to develop the characters? Tell us all the details.
Well, we started out writing, and Terri, you certainly can jump in anytime. We started out writing with building our characters first, and we started meeting weekly. We met once a week. We started out in a restaurant. We decided that is not the place to meet. And so Terri started coming to my home and once a week, and I fed her, and we
She fed me.
You got the best end of that deal, didn't you?
but she had to drive, so that
I drive, she cooks.
That's great.
But we used flip charts. We did all kinds of stuff, and we read everything we could get our hands on to read, as far as one, how to write, but then how to put this information together. We joined several organizations, local. The DFW Writers Group is one that we joined. It's a critique group mostly. Found that supportive in some ways, but also we learned from that in that we didn't know things like point of view and
Voice.
show, don't tell.
Right.
Concepts that are extremely novel related. So you have to write that way when you're writing in fiction, and to try to write was different for us. So initially what we'd started doing was Terri and I divided up the 4 characters. We wrote a scene we thought was going to be we wrote 4 scenes, one for each character. We thought that was going to be our first chapter, but it turned out that was really too much backstory. But what it did do for us was gave us a real depth of insight into each of our writing style. It also gave us a lot of information about how we created. Turns out we learned that Terri is a wonderful editor, and she does the heavy lifting of the editing for us. And we both write. And in our first book, we divided it up by, she would take a scene, I would take a scene. Didn't matter which chapter, we just sort of marshaled through it. We did have an overview outline of the major themes in the book that we wanted to cover, and we forwarded on through that process. With our second book, the Against the World, that we'll be finishing up, we hope, this year, which is the second in the series, we're writing it a little differently. Each of us are writing more of the thematic component and developing the scenes related to the themes. And then we're merging those together as we go. So we structured it together, but the thematic piece we're building, instead of each of us having to know what the other was thinking related to a theme, we've allowed ourselves to do that a little different this time. Terri?
It's going to be a bit more challenging because we're going to have to merge 2 different, essentially they're different stories, they're storylines happening simultaneously. The main character with family, the main character at work, the main character with friends, and the storyline associated with that. We thought we would try continuity, have one person carry the concept from beginning to conclusion in the arc, but then we're going to have to merge those and smooth them in. So we know that's going to be a challenge, but we think the end result is going to be better than the way we approached the first one. And besides, it's more fun. It's more, each of us gets a bit more creative license, and then we get to share. And we edit each other's every word. We work and track changes. We do nothing, absolutely nothing independently, or we do nothing solely. We work independently, and the minute we reach a point where it's time for input, we share. And I will say just one general concept, what works for us so well, what makes this partnership successful, is organization and structure. one partner at least has got to be a very organized, structured, detail-oriented person, and that's obviously Joy Don. From the very beginning, well, it is. I get the work done, but I am, don't ask her because she might tell you, but I'm a piece of work. It's a work. I'm good at what I do. I produce. But managing me is not easy, which is why I own my own business and I have a client base and my clients get what they want, because I like live in my own little world. You need, for our listeners, you need a partner who is well structured. We have a contract that defines our partnership. We agreed on every component of that, because things change over time and things come up that you don't expect, and you have to take it seriously. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to have this kind of structure, because it wouldn't work without it.
You're absolutely right. My first several books were all actually co-authored. And the first one, a large collaboration. The second one, me and another co-author. And you bring up some really, really, really important points. And I want to circle to this partnership and contract thing, because I think that's one of the most important things that you can do from the very beginning, because even though you think to yourself, oh my gosh, we're best friends, or we agree on everything, or this is the way it's going to go, it's much easier to lay that all out at the very beginning than it is if something doesn't go the way you expected, and then it gets murky because you're like, oh, I don't really like the way this is happening, but it's my friend. I don't want to, how do you determine all of those things? For self-publishing books, one of the things that we had to clearly outline was who's paying for what, how do we reimburse that, how do royalties work, there's so many other questions that you have to think long-term about. So I think that was really, really smart of you two to recognize from the beginning how important a partnership and contract would be. It's kind of like premarital counseling in a way. You lay it out like, this is how I feel about these things, So good for you for doing that.
We did several exercises that we'd found or we'd used periodically throughout our careers. And we used those to help get us talking. One of the first things that we did was just simply to write down, why are we doing this? Mm-hmm. Why? Mm-hmm. And explore that. We wrote it down separately. Then we shared that with each other. And then we began to build out the components of our contract. A contract can be done on just a piece of paper. You write it out and you both sign it, and that's the contract. We got a little more formal because we actually have a business.
Right.
We are Baker and Goodman. We have a name. We are doing business as Baker and Goodman. We have a checking account. We have a credit card. We have, it's the kinds of things that you need in order to be able to do this. So when you mentioned money and who's funding what we did was we put in capital into our checking account, and then we used that in order to be able to pay our bills for that. Smart. And that joint account allowed us to be able to manage the finances of it, and then it's a reporting just like you would in any organization to the other partner or partners on what the financial status is each month.
One of the things about the financial structure is we determined up front what is a business expense and what is personal. So there's never a question about who's paying for what. We know what we're paying for individually, and we know what we associate with the business. The other thing I was going to mention, the things that Joy Don is talking about that we did are what the book is about.
Yes, I was about to ask you about that.
We did. Everything in the book documents our successful pathway and all of the components, and it's divided into A, B, and C's: alignment, balance, and like 7 different C's: communication and commerce and
contract.
And other 7 of them.
Will you show that cover again, Joy Don, please?
Yeah, you betcha.
There we go. The A, B, and C's of author partnering. So this is fantastic because, I mean, there really is so much more that goes in now that you have published one and are on your way to multiple books. You know, there's so much more when you first sit down with this idea of there's 4 people I want to write a story about. You're not thinking about all these other things. And then you bring in somebody else that you have to share all these other things with. I mean, just from what you've told us so far, it should be very obvious that there's a whole lot to dig into. So, let's go. What else can they expect from this book? First of all, when's it going to be available?
We anticipate that it'll be out in April.
Okay, great.
Probably the first part of April. In fact, we're going to be doing a launch at the AORN conference, and
that's so cool.
We're sort of starting our launch birthday party at the conference.
Amazing.
Surgical Expo. And looking forward that'll be in Nashville. So any nurses that are coming that way, we both are speaking at that conference, and then we'll have our book for sale at the conference.
Wonderful.
So we're excited about that.
That's great. Okay, so we've covered some of the things that would be covered in there. I would say, what else? I would ask, not say, what else should someone who's thinking about purchasing this book be looking for to learn from you two?
One of the things that we really had to kind of explore was the avenue of creativity is also a part of any writing that you do. And then how do you make that an integral part of it? And yet you have the business components, and you have family and friends. Now
Yes.
we're taking on something where we're both employed somehow. She has her own business. I work at the school. We have people who drive our time, and plus families. And how do we put in one more thing into our lives? So balance, I think, became something that we actually had to talk about and explore how we want to manage that. We both agreed that having time for our families and being able to take that time needed to be protected by each of us. So, for example, if Terri goes on vacation, I need to not worry her to death with details of our book while she's gone. And because we're all electronically supported like we are doing today, it would be too easy to tap in and infringe on that space and time. So we really have had conversations around how do we balance both our work time, work being our book, and our family time or our employment time. And all of these things are something that I think are critical conversations that have to be done with anyone that wants to undertake a partnership in writing, but any kind of activity that you're assuming, and how does it actually fit into what you want to accomplish?
Yeah, that's a great point. Is this geared specifically towards fiction writers, or is it good for fiction and nonfiction writers?
It's good for anyone who is writing partnership. We took it from a perspective of it could be broad as, thousands of people writing research grants and scholarly type work, as well as the focus of a pairing like we are. We wrote the book and we put a caveat at the front that we refer to it as a partner of 2, but it could apply to anybody that's in larger groups of writing.
Okay.
Because the concepts all apply to any time you have more than one person writing.
Sure. Okay, so we like to ask like the best tips or takeaways that you would be willing to provide to someone. And I guess in this case, it would be anybody who's thinking about they want to co-author a book with someone. What are some of the best tips that you can provide them?
Go, Terri.
Go, Terri. The most important thing that I've learned, because I've been writing for a long time, and I think I write well, when we write together, the end result is better than anything I produced or she produced. When I read her work and she reads my work and we edit one another and we negotiate different perspectives, the end result is so much more impressive than either. And that surprised me a lot and pleased me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there are lots of other people out there like me who need to know that. They need to open their minds and know the value of sharing with the right partner and getting more than you thought you would get by yourself.
Absolutely. That's such a good point.
For me, I think it's say what you mean and do what you say.
Mm-hmm.
It's an old saying, but it really does stick. And when you do, and you have committed to that, and being a partner, when you say you're going to do something, when I tell Terri I will do something, if I don't do it or if I have slipped on the time frame, I really feel bad. And I don't like doing that. So when I say what you mean and do what you say, I think that's a commitment to hold each other accountable for what we're saying.
That's one of the C's, by the way, is commitment.
Well, it is. I mean, you're taking on a huge project, and if one person is really excited about making it happen and the other person is dropping their end of the ball, that could cause a lot of frustration and friction as well. I did want to ask if you had any advice in general for like marketing a book when it's co-authored, because I would say in some respects it's easier, but in some respects it's harder when you have two people, two personalities, two ideas of how to get it out there. Or was it all just a lot easier because there were two of you?
Well, in some ways, marketing has eluded us. One, we would like to write and not have to market.
Most writers are in that boat.
Excuse me. But a couple of things that we have done that we're satisfied with, at least we have initiated. Excuse me. We do have a website, and everything that I had read pointed to the fact that we needed a website. And we do. We have it, and it's a website that we are jointly on. And our pictures are on it, and our books are on it, and we have a selling point option on the website. So I think those are key. Mm-hmm. The other component that we have done is we built a Facebook page, both for authors. In Facebook, you can do that, where you have a page for authors. We have that. We also have an account that is a joint account. We named it JT Bakeman. JT Baker Goodman, we named it. But we had played around with a pseudonym for us, and JT Bakeman was our pseudonym that we thought we'd go with. We didn't go with that ultimately. We went with our names. And we're not writing anything that's going to cause us to have terribly different audiences. We're not writing exotica type stuff and then also writing kids stories.
Right.
Where you might need something like that. Our genre can fit together in some of those pieces. So those are the pieces that I think were real critical for us. We've had some book signings. We've had some opportunity to, of course, sell to our friends. And we're reaching out to you and to your group to try to continue that marketing strategy.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a phenomenal book. People are often co-writing things either with what I would ask is there anything that addresses specifically when you're writing with a family member, or if you don't address it in the book, if you have anything that you'd like to say on that topic, like what would be different? I mean, do you still do a contract when you're writing with your husband, for example, or those kinds of things work out?
Most marriages have a contract.
That's true. That makes a contract.
If it takes a contract to help you take the commitment seriously and treat it as if it were not just personal, as if it were business, because it really is business. It will come down to business no matter how much fun it is and no matter how personally you're taking it, it's a business commitment. There's
Sure.
a product involved. The other aha for me was it has to be the right mix. Husband and wife is a wonderful mix if you have all the bases covered. If you have the structure and you have the writing and you have, whatever it is you're going to need, you're either going to have between you or you're going to have to buy. Mm-hmm. And you need to know all that up front. So take it seriously. I think that's the biggest thing, because taking it seriously was a learning experience for me.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point.
As far as, the person who posted on Facebook in your site is a family member who they are mm-hmm. jointly doing this with. They have a different strategy, and I think that's a good one. One is writing the primary author of one book, and the other one is the primary author in the other book. Mm-hmm. I think their strategy can work well that way. I think what you have to do is recognize any time where there is a difference of opinion, it's a point in time to stop mm-hmm. and let's talk. Don't try to just keep going. And both parties have to understand that you have to negotiate to an end result that both parties value. And that was the synergy that Terri was talking about a while ago. If we don't agree on something, that's okay. We have to stop and talk about it. And neither of us can walk away from that conversation. It's like you can't go to bed angry.
Right.
Yeah. You have to really focus on what is the outcome you're trying to accomplish. Now, can we come up with a third alternative that neither of us have thought about?
Mm-hmm. Which is what usually happens. Mm-hmm. And the alternative to that is if it has to be a your way or my way. If there's really not a melding, then you just take turns being in charge.
That's such a great idea. I don't know if either of you have.
It works out that way. It's called equity rather than equality.
Yes.
Things are fair, not necessarily equal.
Right.
If I'm willing to die on the sword, she will probably let me. But then it's my turn the next time it comes up to remember that, respect it, and let her die on the next sword.
Well, I prefer not to die, but
let's not stab each other, ladies.
what she really is addressing is the fact that there are discussion points, even words sometimes that we talk about that are really one or the other is very vested in something, a particular word even. Mm-hmm. And then, but maybe it's not a big deal to the other person so much. So that is a give and take in what she's talking about with dying on the sword. But the real issues where there is a balance of something that needs to come up different does need more thought, more talk. And they're more important to the outcome of the book, not a word or something of that nature. Grammar points, for example, I will defer to her. That means she's a grammar queen. The pieces of, but as far as the storyline, the point of view, the characters, those where we have to talk a little bit more to make sure that we are in sync.
Yeah.
Being in sync is quite different than giving in or letting someone have their way. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about we have to find and meld into a consensus where you can't tell when I wrote something or Terri wrote it. Mm-hmm. It has to be ours. Mm-hmm. When you get to that point, you have something that's very precious.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting that we write very differently. But after the second and third edit, I can't remember who wrote what.
That's good. That's a good sign of a well co-authored book. Oh, well, that's exciting. I look forward to checking out the Nurseketeers book. And the second one, when was that one? It says in your bio coming in 2019, but that was very vague.
It isn't finished yet.
Okay. Well, we'll be looking for it. We'll be looking to share it as soon as it's out there and ready. Is there any, so first of all, where do people find your website? We did not actually mention the website.
That's at
BakerGoodman.com.
BakerGoodman.com.
BakerGoodman.com. Okay, great. And is there any final point that you would like to leave our listeners with before we wrap this up?
Take the challenge. It's an awesome opportunity, and finding a quality partner is great. The other thing is that Terri and I probably would never have done this independently.
That's
we're
very good
people,
statement. Yes.
But we are better because we have done it together.
Yeah. Terri, did you want to add anything?
Ditto.
You two are a great partnership.
I call our partnership life after life, because nursing is a lifetime profession. You know, there's not a 65 retirement age in nursing, but a lifetime of doing the same thing is, you know, that's kind of like not as exciting as having something to look forward to. And the transition from employment, you know, from traditional employment to self-employment to recreational employment, because our partnership is a business, but it's totally ours. Yeah. You know, my business is totally mine, except it's client dependent. I mean, I don't get all the say. And Joy Don teaches at a university, which has creativity there, but she doesn't get to run the show. And this is something that we are going to have that belongs to us, that lasts a lifetime.
Yes.
But it is also dependent on our readers.
It is dependent on the readers. So that's the big takeaway for all of us writers. We have to have readers. So I want everybody, if you know a nurse in your life, I can tell you from having most of my mom and her sisters, and she has 10 siblings. So there's a lot of nurses in the family, cousins, uncles. I mean, we got it. My mother-in-law was also a nurse. So I have a lot of people that I can share this book. And nursing, like anything else, like being a veteran or being, an engineer or whatever, like you have these bonds. And I think that nurses will probably all want to read your book. So if you know a nurse, if you love a nurse, or if you just like fun stories about nurses, check out Nurseketeers. That's the title of the first book, right?
The Wake Up Call is the title of the first book. It's the Nurseketeers series.
The Nurseketeers.
And the Wake Up Call is the first book. It takes place in 1970s, and we have they're starting college. So it's a concept that's anyone starting college in 1970s, but we have had readers tell us that it is very similar to what is happening today with students who start college today. So, even though it was in the 70s, it also takes place with reality of transitioning from high school into college.
Awesome. It sounds like a great series. I'm looking for it. We just published a book called Our Duty about two nurses during World War II. One of them goes off to the war and one of them stays home, and it's it was so much fun to be a part of that process because one, it's based on real women. It's based on her mother and her mother's best friend and their stories. And just, I don't know, it's fun. It's exciting. Nurses live an interesting life. I mean, it can be anywhere from operating and, emergency room like excitement to cleaning out bedpans. So you never know what adventures are going to be bestowed upon you that day. So I always joked with my mom that I could have never been a nurse because I fainted a finger prick. So, but I enjoy like the idea of what it would have been like if I could have been truly part of saving someone's life on a daily basis. It's a wonderful thing you do. So thank you for this. All the information that you provided today is really, really great. I know it's going to help a lot of people as they really consider what they're getting into. And also just the fact that it can be such a rewarding and wonderful experience in addition to all the stuff that you have to work through. So We appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing them, the rest of the books roll out in your series.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.